Hey guys, this is Matthew. Just wanted to walk us through some of these quiz 4 questions for context and understanding. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. The first question, in your own words, describe how a form works. And in HTML, you can create these form elements on just a static HTML page. But in order for it to work, the data has to be submitted or sent somewhere. And so just for full disclosure and context for where you all are at right now, you don't need to worry about the database or PHP or any of that more complicated stuff. But generally, the user enters some data into a variety of HTML, just kind of like form controls. So that could be like a password, a username. It could be a submit button. It could be sort of like a radio circumstance where you can choose choose from 3 or 4 different items by clicking. Um, I'm kind of going through just some of these options, which are just kind of fun to even remind myself of. Text input, text area, password input. We just talked about the radio button or a checkbox, which one do you prefer, iTunes or Spotify? The multiple select box or a drop down. These are all just like form elements or controls that you can add. I think, for the project 4, I wanted you to just kind of give these a shot. But I also understand that, we're trying to put this into the context of a CV or a resume, but I'm not really sure if these fit into that system. So you'll just kind of have to break some rules and maybe treat project 4 a little bit uniquely. Okay. But, as far as how a form works, the data is entered by the user on the screen through some HTML form controls. It is submitted and then it goes into a database up in the server for storage, which can be reviewed later. And usually that's a PHP database, okay? That's basically how it works, and then that's it. And then usually you can set up a command also where after a form is successfully submitted, a page will pop up that will say, we got your information. Woohoo! Okay, you don't need to worry, we got your information. A good example of that would possibly even mean like, submitting an order. If you're buying something, you get those confirmation pages. So that's generally, without going into great detail, how a form works, okay? And again, for this particular project, there is a laundry list of things. Hold on a second, my computer's thinking. There's a laundry list of things that I would like for you to just kind of have some fun putting into a page, okay? So, but some of these, if not all of them, may not exactly be relevant to your CV or resume. So maybe you need to switch gears a little bit and maybe create a brand new index.html. Okay. I just want to see that you can do it and that you did do it. That's what I'm looking for from project 4. And then it says, what is PHP and how does it collect info, from a form? PHP is just a database, and it's an interactive database. And actually, a majority of websites are mostly based off of PHP at this point, because like WordPress or Joomla or even like Squarespace, those are all database driven web platforms. And so HTML is really handy to know, because within the HTML pages on a WordPress website, for example, you still have to plug in HTML like you used to. And so having that basic knowledge moving forward is a very good thing. That's why I really like teaching this class. But the real truth is, while I'm teaching this class, I'm saying, hey, most likely you're not going to create a static HTML site, but you're going to be using HTML and thinking about it when you're putting content onto pages. into a WordPress or Joomla website, which is database driven or PHP database driven. So if you look at a PHP database online, to my knowledge, it pretty much and experience, it pretty much looks like almost kind of like an Excel spreadsheet. And so yeah, it's just something to collect data and respond to. Okay. It's all up in the server though. It's all up in the cloud. So if you get hosting through GoDaddy or Bluehost, you can set up a PHP database website like WordPress, and then you can even edit that database, or you can look at the detailed information on that database. But here's something else. This book is a little older, and like although HTML is certainly still valuable to think about and use, a lot of folks, as far as I can tell, they're creating forms using Google Forms. And it's pretty cool, all the new tools that are made available. But in order to put a Google form on a website, you have to use an iframe. And of course, we're learning about iframes and that sort of thing in these chapters. So just kind of keep that in mind, that even creating a form, this sort of old school HTML way, it's already antiquated, because things like Google Form, you can do something similar and you can actually collect the results and look at the results. And I'm almost certain that that is database driven. Okay. Name one form element that might be useful in your coding project. Okay, well, you guys can do that. I think it starts on page 148, and it goes all the way up until like 168. Okay, so if you look on any of those pages, you're going to see some options. So I'm going to be a little less attentive to questions 3 through 5, just because I feel like you can look in the textbook and you might even after experimenting with some of these form controls realize that that some are more useful than others. What is HTML5? Well, HTML5, we've talked about it before. It's basically just the evolution of HTML. And so sometimes there are new tags, sometimes there are evolving or changing tags, but either way, HTML5 is always growing and changing, and there are iterations of HTML that have happened since even like the mid-late 80s, okay, up until now. Question 7, why are comments so important to use in a team web design development, graphic design office, etc. environment? I think this is a really fantastic question, because it essentially means that designers and web developers should be using good practice in their coding methods. So clean code, correct code, not sloppy code. And additionally, sometimes when you do something, you can leave a comment for a client. Like if you solved a problem, or I don't know if something happened with a particular code, or you're just trying to call it out as an issue, or you can talk to other team members that might be looking at that same document that is on a shared web server. And that's pretty much what that comment is about. When you are in a graphic design office or development office or whatever, you will find that you're collaborating and you're learning from and working with folks like yourselves that have an interest in technology and web design and graphic design. So it's kind of fun, and you can joke around maybe a little bit, although I wouldn't advise to do that. But yeah, comments are really, really important to communicate, essentially. And when you use a comment, it's not visible to the user. It's only visible on the back end, on the code back end, okay? Number 8, describe the difference between a class and an ID attribute. ID attributes are for unique individual circumstances, and we haven't started talking about CSS so much, but it'll become more clear when we're essentially giving commands to HTML tags and elements to to appear a certain way, like for example, to be the color green, or for a background to be the color orange. Okay. And so IDs and classes are used in a similar manner, but IDs are for unique circumstances and classes are for broader circumstances. Okay, that's the best way I can really sort of unpack that. But I think it's really important to know that classes and IDs are almost sort of verbatim and behave the same way. In fact, I almost sometimes I wonder why. Maybe it's due to I haven't run across this circumstance before, but I think classes can behave like IDs and IDs can behave like classes when you're doing CSS work. But maybe it becomes more apparent when you're doing extremely advanced CSS work. Number 9, describe 2 circumstances where you would use a block element and an inline element. Well, just to kind of summarize, a block element is like a paragraph tag. Like when you create paragraph text, it wants to start a new line. Okay. And inline elements, I mean, maybe it's better if I'm going to read this. Block elements. Some elements will always appear to start on a new line in the browser window. These are known as block level elements, and examples are an H1, a paragraph, an unordered list, and a list item. Those are block level elements. Inline elements. Some elements will always appear to continue on the same line as their neighboring elements. These are known as inline elements. Examples are an A or link tag, B for bold, EM for emphasis, and IMG for image. Okay, so you can actually put 2 images next to each other when you're writing code, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty useful, and that's on page 185 and 186 of your textbook. That's very valuable information to sort of keep with you. Okay. And then number 10 is name one last form element that might be useful, yada, yada, yada. I think you guys can do that one on your own. Just look at the variety of items that you've done and critique them and let me know if they're useful or not. Okay. All right. That's it for quiz 4. Thanks, guys.